Around here, we store our CDs in this rack badly. They collect a lot of dust. I only have room for about 90, and the weight is causing these rods to sag. If I want to find a particular label, I have to stand up on my ear. So I thought that I could come up with a better way to store our CDs. And I didn't need to look any further than right here, our hardware storage unit. Now these drawers came out of an old pharmacy renovation, and I really like the look. They're nicely machined around the edges, and this hardware has a provision for labels, which lets me know what's in each drawer. So it's a good way to keep things organized. Also, if I look at the size of the drawer front, it's about the same as a CD. So I thought, well, if I build a few drawers and put them in a case, we'll have a nice unit. And here's what I came up with. It's a 6-drawer unit. Each drawer has full extension when it's open. It'll hold 30 CDs in each, 180 total. And because they're arranged in this direction, it's very easy to read the labels. I've also made this little sliding stop so that if the drawer isn't full, they won't all fall over. And because they're in a case, they're not going to get dusty. The hardware I obtained from my mail order hardware supplier, and they also have room for labels, so I can put jazz in here, rock and roll in here, the Christmas CDs in here. I built the piece out of heart pine. This is salvaged timber. Came from sinker logs that went to the bottom of rivers on the way to the sawmill. Once they're brought up, dried, cut into timber, you have beautiful wood. And what's really nice is when you cut into this, you can smell the resin even though it's 100 years old. I want to start today by working on these end panels. There are stiles and rails as well as these flat panels. The flat panels sit in grooves. So I've set up my table saw with the stacked dado cutter for a 1/4 inch width, 3/8 of an inch height, and adjusted the fence so that when I run each piece through, the groove will be almost perfectly centered, but if I turn it around and run it through again, then I know it is perfectly centered. But before we use any power tools, let's take a moment to talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now I'm cutting the rails and stiles to length. I square one end and then slide it up against my adjustable stop. You've seen me use this before. It's real convenient because it assures me that every piece is going to be exactly the same length. For the last few minutes I've been forming tenons which are going to be on the ends of the rails. The tenon fits into the groove that I just machined. It gives me a glue surface area to lock the pieces together when I assemble them. To form the tenon, I've widened the dado to 3/8 of an inch. I've installed this sacrificial strip because I'm removing material all the way to the end. Using the miter gauge, I make one pass over, flip it over, make another pass, and I've got the tenon. The panels for the case are 1/4 inch thick heart pine. I could take 3/4 inch stock and run it through my surface planer until it's a 1/4 inch thick, but that's a waste of a lot of material. However, if I use my bandsaw and I resaw the 3/4 inch piece in half, I'll get 2 panels and save a lot of material. Okay, now we'll smooth them out at the surface planer. For the assembly of the panel, I apply some glue to the tenon and in the groove. The first piece I'm going to install is the center stile. I put a couple marks to show where that is. Just line it up in between those marks. And I'll clamp that up. No glue on the panels. They just slip in. All right. right, we'll set that aside to dry and build another one. With the drawers removed from the case, we can now see inside. These are our draw slides, and they're attached at the back to this plywood frame and at the front to this pine frame because we're going to see these edges. At this intersection, I used a half lap joint. I've removed material from each piece, and they simply slip together like that. At the bottom, right here, it's slightly different. There's a dado in the horizontal piece, and the vertical piece just has a notch, and it fits together like this. Now, to make all those notches, I'm using the dado head, and I've matched the width of the dado head to the thickness of my material. I'm going to do the horizontal pieces first. So here's the three pieces ganged together with the layout, and I've set my fence up as a stop so that once I make the pass on this end, all I have to do is turn it around, butt it up against the fence, and make the second pass. I'm also going to use a piece of scrap plywood as a backer strip because this pine splinters very easily, so I want to prevent that from happening. I'm going to go through the dado slowly because it's set at a very deep depth. Now these are the two vertical pieces clamped together. I've just made one cutout in the middle. Now I'm going to notch each end. A little bit of glue at each intersection of the frame is all I need. And I'll drive the pieces together, and then I'll tack them with some brads until the glue dries. Okay, that takes care of the plywood frame. We'll set these aside to dry, and now that the glue is set on the panels, we can remove them from the clamps and make rabbets and dados to receive the frames. With the dado head lowered to 1/8 of an inch and my sacrificial strip installed, I'm able to make a shallow rabbet at the top and the bottom of each panel. And that takes care of the dado in the middle of the panel. This 3/8 inch wide dado will receive the back of the case. To assemble the frame, I've put some glue in the rabbet and the dado at the center, squeeze the pieces together, and tack it with some brads. Few clamps to suck everything tightly together while the glue dries. Now we can make the boxes for the drawers. Let's take a look at how the drawers are made. The four sides of the drawer are 1/2 inch plywood. The back meets the side with a dado connection. The front meets the side with a little lock joint. There's a 1/4 inch plywood bottom. There are these 1/4 inch strips which hold up the CDs. And there's a hardwood strip right down the center which guides this stop, which will hold all the CDs from falling over. The first thing I want to do is make these 1/4 inch grooves for the strips and for the bottom. I've set up the dado for the thickness of the plywood, and I'm going to run a groove in all the side and front pieces. Each side piece gets a second groove for this 1/4 inch plywood, which is going to support the CDs. The purpose of that groove in the side pieces is to receive the tenon from the front, which gives us that lock joint. That dado in the side piece receives the back of the draw box. After installing the sacrificial strip and making some adjustments to the height of the dado, I'm able to mill the other half of that lock joint in the front piece. For For the assembly of the drawers, once again, a little bit of carpenter's glue on all the joints. And just slip these pieces together and flush. Drop the back piece in and the plywood bottom goes in dry. And then the other side, and then we'll tack it together with some brads. Let's look again at the prototype drawer. This stop for the CDs rides on a solid piece of wood, and it keeps them from falling over. Now, how it works is that the solid piece of wood has been cut at 25 degrees on each side, and the plywood slips over it. As soon as you angle the plywood back, it gets wedged so that it can't move, supporting the CDs. I want to bevel the solid pieces first. Okay, there's my 25 degrees. Lock that in. Now I'll bevel this edge. Now I'll use my sample piece to set the rip fence. Slide it over to the blade and lock it off. A little bit of glue right down the center of the strip. And then I cut this gauge block so that the strip will be exactly in the center. Set that in place. Then put the piece in tight up against the front of the draw box. And then I'll install a few brads along this line that I scribed at the bottom. These little plywood strips will support the plastic cases that the CDs come in. They just fit in that upper groove that I put in the side pieces, a little bit of glue, no nails. Okay, one down, 5 more to go. I'll finish those up before I leave tonight. Tomorrow we'll make the drawer fronts, the top, and the trim around the bottom. We'll easily get it done. Okay, 2, 8, 7, 4, 6. Need 6 of those. Good morning. I had to take a few minutes this morning and order some hardware for a project I'm going to start working on in a few days. If your emails or your letters are any indication, you want to know where we get our hardware. Well, this is where we get it, from mail order catalogs. These come week after week, month after month, and they're just as valuable to us as the best tools in the workshop. They are a tool. We look through them for the newest hardware technology, and often it gives us ideas for our projects. In fact, let me show you the hardware that I ordered for our CD storage case. The drawer slides that I selected work very smoothly. They have full extension, and you don't see them. It's a very ingenious piece of hardware. Let me pop it apart so I can show you. One piece gets attached to the bottom of the drawer right along the center, and the other one goes in the case. Now, these are actually made to go on the sides of drawers. But after working with them, I realized that I could put one horizontally and it would give me plenty of support for a full rack of CDs. So what I did is I bought 3 pair. Each one will do 2 drawers. Now, the poles came from the same catalog, and they include the screws. And these items will be listed on our plan. Let's put some of the hardware on. As I said, one piece gets attached to the center line of the drawer on the bottom. The other part gets set in our case. It has to be held back a ½ inch from the front, so I've put an indicator mark. You open it up and drive a screw. It's good that I have this little right angle drill because that allows me to get in these tight openings. Now I'll put another one at the back, and we'll be able to put it together. Okay, that takes care of the installation of the drawer boxes. Now let's start working on the drawer fronts. What I did is found the nicest pine that I had with this quarter sawn grain. I had to cut it into smaller pieces and glue it together. That'll give me very little shrinkage and the draw fronts won't cup. I also took the time to make sure that I made a blank big enough so that I could get 3 draw fronts with continuous grain so they all match up nicely. To make that profile on the edge of the draw front, I'm going to use my router table, which is set up with a multi-profile bit. I have to run the pieces through vertically. First I'll do across the grain, because if I get any tear out, that'll be removed when I go with the grain. Just move the pieces through slowly. Okay, that was the first pass. Now just raise the router slightly and make another pass. Okay, now I'm just taking some 150 grit sandpaper and knocking off all these sharp corners and just hitting the edges so that it'll be ready for finish. Now I'm ready to install the pieces. What I do is I've put some small marks at the front of the opening, and I'm going to take these spring clamps and lock it in place. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I can come around the other side, sneak my angle drill in there, hold the draw front, and re-drill for a screw. All right, now we can pull that off, the screw, and set that. Okay, now we'll go around front and check the alignment. Pop these off first. And that looks good. Now I can open the drawer and drill for a couple more screws. Now for the back. It's 3/8 inch thick hard pine, several pieces glued together. Why make it pretty on the back? Well, just in case this piece is seen from this side, I wanted it to look good. This slides down in the grooves that I cut earlier. It's not going to be glued in place. It sticks up above the top about 1/4 inch, and I'm going to put one screw right at the center of the bottom to hold it in place. One more thing before I start working on the top. I want to put these blocks in. They're going to be used to help hold the top onto the case. A little bit of glue and some brads. Here's the blank for the top of the case. It's 3 1x6s glued together. And as much time as I took to try to hold them nice and flush when I did the glue up, there's still a slight variation between the pieces, so I have to sand it nice and smooth. With the top sanded, I'm ready to cut it to size, and I've brought out my panel cutter that I made on the show. You can also see this on our website. I'm going to drop the panel in place, square up one end, and then I'll cut it to length. Just line that mark up with the end of my jig, and cut the other side. There's a sample of the edge treatment that I want on the top. I'm using a 1-inch radius roundover bit, just a portion of it to give me this nice detail. Watch. Well, I've just routed a 3/8 inch wide, 1/4 inch deep groove on the underside of the top. And that's going to fit over the lip at the back of the case. These are the holes to attach the top. I elongate the front one and the middle one to allow movement of the top. The back hole is the same size as the screw. Okay, that takes care of the top to the case. Now let's work on the base trim. To obtain the profile I want, I start with this bit, the same one I used earlier. Now I'll change bits and make another pass. Now look what this OG bit is going to do for me. If I run the bottom corner through that lower radius, it'll give me a nice eased edge. To reinforce the mitered corners of the base trim, I'm cutting slots for number 0 biscuits. I'm applying a little bit of glue. Set it on my marks, and I'll attach it with some 1 1/4 inch brads. Each of the drawers requires one of these sliding stops. It'll keep your CDs from falling over. I need to make 6, so I've clamped 6 pieces of 1/4 inch plywood together. I've tipped my saw blade to 25 degrees. I'll make the angled cuts at my layout, square the saw up, remove the material between, and knock off these corners. This heart pine will age all on its own to an orange hue. And the only thing that I need to keep it looking that way is a clear finish. So I'm applying a gloss polyurethane. I'll put on several coats. It'll protect the wood, and it'll let the beauty of the wood show through. What a joy having this CD storage case. Now all my favorite CDs are categorized. I'll be able to read the labels easily when I take them out or put them away, and they'll remain dust-free. Now with 3 coats of polyurethane on this heart pine, it really brings out the beauty of the wood. And I have enough room to buy some more CDs.